Hi, welcome to episode 2 of Stephanie Earp's Knitting Podcast, the catchiest name in knitting podcasting, definitely. Uh, Today I have a horror story, a tale of knitterly woe to share with you. So strap in. It was a dark and stormy night. It wasn't. It was St. Patrick's Day weekend, and I had just released Galore, a top-down sort of colorful sweater, and I guess it was sort of my first hit. It went like mini viral, and it was getting reposted in all kinds of places, and it was just super exciting. I felt awesome. I felt like I had hit the knitting designer big time, and I was going off for the weekend to Kingston, Ontario to visit my parents. So of course I packed the sweater because I wanted to show it to my mom. You never grow out of that, no matter how old you get. You want to show your cool stuff to your mom. So I took it with me, and I had this wonderful weekend. And meanwhile, various Queen students were jumping off roofs and drinking themselves into stupors. And I don't think any cars were lit on fire this time. That tends to happen more around homecoming. But it was a wild weekend in Kingston, but not for me. I was like hanging around with my folks and enjoying the waterfront and all that stuff. Although I think it was pretty chilly. Anyway, I didn't wear my Galore home. I put it in my bag and went to go get on the megabus to go home. And it was crowded, full of Queen students, and I assume also university students from Montreal, going home, having trashed another town, so I had to go back to where they live, or where they go to school. And so I ended up taking a spot on the upper deck. It's like a double-decker bus. This all sounds very ominous, right? But of course I have no idea what's about to happen. I'm just sitting on the bus, watching stuff on my computer. And when we got to Montreal and it was time to get off, I was very polite because I am very polite and let all kinds of people go in front of me. And by the time I got down to the platform where they'd been unloading the bags, no bag. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's still coming. And there's the guy's like closing up the baggage area. I'm like, is there anything else in there? He says no. I'm like, well, where's my bag? Anyway, it was gone. My bag was gone. So then I went through that whole weird thing where like you stand around sort of not having any idea what to do about this. Like, what do you do? So I went into like the megabus station, which I'm lucky there even is one in Montreal. A lot of times with these bus routes, it's like they just drop you in front of a Swiss chalet somewhere, and sort of say, my bag is missing. And they have like nothing in place to deal with this. This woman says, oh, can you describe it? Sure, I don't know. Yeah, like verbally. So eventually I write down my phone number. I had to draw a sketch of the bag. I'm like, do I get a receipt? Do I get any kind of anything saying that I've made this report? Nothing. She gives me a 1-800 number. So I go outside and call this 1-800 number a few times. I actually called every station stop on the bus route to see if if the bag had gotten taken off at the wrong stop. Nothing. But this woman at the desk assures me this happens sometimes. It happens. And it's usually just a mistake. Someone has picked up the wrong bag because they just dump them out on the sidewalk, right? They're just like, and doesn't realize it. And we'll bring it back or we'll call. So I leave with this hope in mind. I go and get on the metro. And it's not until I get on the metro that I realize, the Galore sweater was in there. And I believe the text message I sent to my husband was basically just like F words over and over again as I this hit me. Like I'd lost, lots of other stuff, but that was the one obviously that was like brutal. So you're probably thinking, well, Stephanie, I see this beautiful sweater sitting next to you on this mannequin. Surely this story has a happy ending. Well, it doesn't. They never found my bag. No one ever returned it. And what they had to offer me after weeks and weeks of me harassing them was a $100 credit. And I think all of you knitters probably know that $100 doesn't even begin to cover even the yarn that was used in this sweater. But oh God, the piteous, piteous emails I tried to send to this poor woman, Sherry, in customer care, trying to explain not only like the worth of the yarn or the worth of the sweater, the emotional impact of like, this was my first hit knit design. Obviously, and Sherry was like always responding with a form message of like, thank you for getting in touch. It was super frustrating. So I had a period of mourning and actually I'm not entirely sure I'm through all the 12 stages of grief about it, but what adds insult to injury is I loved it so much, and I thought I'm gonna knit another one, and I totally stalked the Etsy shop of Knitty and Colors, an indie dyer that I love her work, and managed to nab 2 skeins of her Supernova colorway, which it's stunning. And then I had also purchased some more Madeline Tosh DK, which I'd used, and was all ready to do a second one. And guess what? Half of that yarn was in that suitcase as well, so that's gone. And now I only have 1 skein of the Knitty and Color DK, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm sure I'll find something, but it was like a double heartbreak of not only was the original sweater gone, so is the follow-up one. So I think I had posted on my blog at the time that I was going to try and do a new version that had a lower neckline. I still want to do that, but I need to get the courage up to do it. I have some skeins of Madeline Tosh that I've been sort of picking and choosing, hoping to recreate it, but I don't think I fully have accepted that it's never going to look like the original. So that's my very, very sad story about the Galore sweater. However, I'm very lucky to have awesome colleagues, including Carla, who right now might be having a baby. Godspeed, God bless. I hope that everything's going well wherever you are, Carla. But a couple weeks ago, I asked her if I could borrow her Galore sweater, because she knitted as well, so that I could have something to show you guys on the podcast. So this is Carla's Galore, which I think she used a combination of Artfil DK, Artfil Americana DK is the name of the yarn, and some Madeline Tosh as well. And mine was more purples and blues, but she started out with like a really nice red. There might be some Tanis fiber in here as well. I'll ask if I can find her project notes and share them, but it goes from red through into purple, and then it ends with this lovely, lovely hot pink. So here are the design details on the Galore and sort of where it came from. So as I mentioned in my first podcast, I work at Espace Tricot, which is a local yarn shop on Monkland here in Montreal. And I'm basically addicted to tidying up the Madeline Tosh cubbies. Like, if you're looking for me in the store and you can't find me, that's where I am. So I'd be like tidying up all the DK, and there were these 5 skeins that to me, magically, they just belonged together. But we really only had 1 of each of these colors. And I don't even need to look at notes to tell you exactly what the colors were, because I looked at them so much. It was Deep, Baroque Violet, Flash Dance, Lepidoptera, and Cactus Flower. And some of them were sort of discontinued. We weren't going to be able to get any more. Others we might have gotten in another shipment at some point. Basically, I would just pet these skeins, and then eventually I actually put them away on hold for myself. But I guess the problem was a little bit like, what do you make with 5 skeins when you don't have extra skeins of different colors? Like, I just knew that I was sort of going to be riding a little bit close to the wind if I tried to do a sweater with these 5 colors. So eventually I came up with this idea of doing, I guess, a gradient or an ombre. I'll talk more about those words in a second. And using these 5 colors. So I had to, like, in my design, sort of maximize how much I could get out of each skein so I could get a full sweater with these 5 skeins alone. And I was really determined that I wanted to do it from the bottom up when I started this design, because I thought it'd be easier to judge how much yarn I had, because most of the sweater is this width, so I'd have a better sense of how much of a stripe I could get. So I had knit this a few times, and then I had heard about this idea that you could kind of do afterthought sleeves, that you could get cast on stitches here for the yoke and then keep knitting up, and then pick up stitches here and knit down. Well, lo and behold, when you use a provisional cast on that way, you lose half a stitch. And I kind of knew that in the back of my head, but I hadn't done that in so long that I'd kind of forgotten about it. And when it came time to do it with this strong vertical of these slip stitches, it looked pretty awful. So I had to pull the whole thing out and redo it from the top down. So this is a top-down design. Quite a high neck, but one of the things I realized after sort of writing it up is it'd be really easy to switch this to a lower neck. The way that the design works is that you do kind of like an inch of ribbing, and then you do an increase row, and then you do short rows for the back neck. So if you wanted to change it up, you could just actually cast on the number of stitches for after that first increase, do your short rows, and keep going. And it basically would take this down by about an inch and a half. So that was my big goal. I was going to try that with that Knitty and Color stuff and see how that looked. And I'll get there. I'm just not there yet. So this, the way that I blended the colors is by using a slip stitch pattern. So mostly this is it's worked in two rounds at a time. So 2 rounds in color A, 2 rounds in color B. And so most of the time through this sweater, you're actually using 2 colors. The exceptions are at the very beginning here, because I didn't want you to have to change colors while you're also doing short rows and all that stuff. And then down at the very bottom at the hem, there's a section where it's just 1 color. But the rest of the time, you're actually using 2 different colors at the same time, alternating every 2 rounds. And what this does is it really allows instead of seeing it as 1 color, you're seeing a blend the whole time, which allows you to really sort of take it out of color blocking and more into like a real gradient. And when I say it's a slip stitch pattern, it's just these little columns of knits that are slipped. So it's 1 round you slip it, the next round you knit it. And what that does is sort of zigzags your colors. So because, say let's say you're working, you do your 2 rounds in red. When you slip that red stitch, it doesn't get knit, so it's sitting there. And then when you switch to say a purple, you do knit it in purple. I don't know, I'm not describing this very well, but basically it means that instead of seeing straight lines across, you're seeing a little bit of a jagged, and it really just helps that blend happen. So for example, and the other thing is that it's mostly on a reverse stockinette base. So it's purl stitches between 3 purl stitches. Actually, it changes. The purl stitches are what grows, and that is what you're seeing on the right side. So you can see when I lift it up how much more striped it looks. Like that's the stockinette side, and then on this side it really blends in. So you'll see that a lot when you see patterns that use fades or gradients. People will often choose to highlight the reverse stockinette, which means the purl side, because it really helps this stuff blend in. So it's a super stretchy stitch as well. So like it has a lot of room. And the fact that Carla was pregnant when she made this and managed to wear it for a number of months shows just how stretchy it is. But also when I was knitting it, we had like a knit night at Espace Tricot, and I was working away on it. And we had a few visitors in from New York because Stephanie from Asylum Fibers was in doing a trunk show, and she had brought some of her friends with her. And one of these women reached out to me after I lost the sweater and was posting about it on Instagram. She said, "Oh, I remember that sweater. I didn't make the connection because I thought you were knitting a sweater for a child." So that should go to show you just how small it will look before you block it. It's a really stretchy stitch. So size-wise, this one's got a lot on offer, because the nice thing about like a circular yoke is it's pretty easy to grade. This goes from a size 34 to a size 54. So all the way through to basically 2X, 3X. But bear in mind, and I think anyone who is knitting at those sizes knows this already, I don't have to tell you, that bust shaping can be a bit of a difficult thing when you're knitting up at a bigger size, because we don't all grow through sizes in the same places in the same ways. So I actually did write up a blog post for Galore on how to add some bust shaping to this so that your sweater wouldn't ride up in the front, say. And because this has such a strong vertical in it, it doesn't really qualify for vertical bust darts, which are a really cool technique where you sort of go, you do some increasing here and then you decrease down at the neck. But it would work really well with some short rows across here to add, it adds like a cup. Like imagine a sock heel or a bra cup, like it adds space here. So that wouldn't be tough. And of course, if you've made it through the short rows in the back, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do this technique here too. My short rows for this sweater, I wrote them as wrap and turns, and since then I've learned a lot about German short rows, and I think that's what I would do if I was knitting it again, and when I eventually knit it again, that's what I'll do. So that's something to consider. If you know German short rows, feel free to insert those instead of the wrap and turns. But I also wrote it in such a way that you're always wrapping on a knit stitch, so you don't have to learn both techniques of how to hide your wraps. You're just hiding them on knit stitches every time. So as far as choosing colors for something like this, I actually had this awesome customer at Espace Tricot, Vicky, who was knitting this sweater, came in, and we spent some time choosing some colors for her, and it was really cool because she decided to go with a much more neutral palette, sort of almost like a monochromatic grays and beiges and off-whites. And it was really fun to like get away from the color part of it and just think about the way that it would shade through. But I would say that the key is to look for skeins that have a little something in common. It doesn't have to be like a true gradient like what I chose or what Carla's chosen. You can move off that beaten path, but the key thing is to have skeins that, like, when you put them next to each other, they have a little something in common. Maybe there's a bit of purple here, and this is dark purple, or there's a speckle of orange, and this has got a speckle of orange. So that will help to sort of tie the two skeins together. But of course, because this is actually a stitch where you are working every 2 rounds, except in the sections where you're transitioning, I think it blends better than some of the other fade ideas that are out there, as much as I love all of them. But this one, I don't think you need to be as worried about things not working out. So I called this an ombre sweater when I posted the pattern on Ravelry, and I think it is it's actually probably not an ombre. It's a gradient, at least the way I knit it. So I did a little Googling to make sure I'm right on this. A gradient, well, it's funny, with gradients it's hard to get information because Google is overwhelmed with information about computer programming and gradients when it comes to computers. But basically, it seems to me that a gradient is about a transition through hues. All right, so this is a perfect example of that, going from the red into the purple and then into the pink. Or my version, which goes from blues through purples and into pinks. Whereas an ombre is more about a change in intensity. So going from, say, like white through to black, going through shades of gray. That would be more of an ombre. Like, think about the way we do, now they call it balayage, but the hair, right? Like the ombre hair. It's not so much that you change color, it's that it changes intensity. And then you get into something like into the word fade, which obviously designer Andrea Mowry has really popularized that idea. And to me, a fade is like, do what you want. It's about transitioning through colors, but you don't necessarily do it by hue or intensity. You kind of, you use that idea of like, does the skein move into the skein in an interesting way? And I think Andrea Mowry's work is very considered. She talks a lot about a coherent fade in her patterns. And I think that's something that she's very, very gifted at and very careful with. But then also you look at someone like Stephen West, who that's a more is more approach. The idea of if you throw enough colors in there, it's going to work in some way or another. And I love that approach as well. So, I think if you're thinking about knitting this, and you're unsure about color, you can consider those ideas. The other thing that might help you is a color wheel. We actually sell these now at Espace Tricot because they're so useful for choosing color work in stranded knitting, but also something like this. Just actually looking at the way that the greens work with yellows or blues work with purples, to have something to sort of look at and say, okay, what works for me? And then if I know that I love blue against my face, but I really have always wanted to work with bright yellow, how could I get from blue down to yellow in a way that would look good? So that's a possibility. The other thing to think about is sort of warm versus cool. If you're picking colors and you're feeling a bit nervous about your color choices, consider whether the colors are all on the cool side of things with more blue undertones, or maybe whether they're all warm tones with pink undertones. That will also help you put things together in a way that works. And the other thing that you could do is take a black and white photo. Well, take a photo with your phone of your stuff, and then choose a filter that puts it into black and white, and you'll see more clearly whether there is a difference in intensity, if that's what you're looking for, that ombre effect, or whether they're all about the same intensity. When you go into black and white, they'll all look gray. But obviously, if you're doing a gradient, which is really what I was trying for, that's what you're looking for. So yeah, that's the Galore. I don't think there's anything else to add about the design. In a lot of ways, it's really simple. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Inside the pattern, because I obviously designed it to work with my 5 skeins, when I did the yardage requirements for all the different sizes, sometimes you were going to have to go up to 2 or even 3 skeins of each color, but maybe not have to use very much of a skein. And I hate that. I hate when you have to buy a skein for 100 yards or less than 100 yards. So one of the things I included in the pattern is a little chart to help you if you wanted to go up to, say, 6 colors or down to 3, or I think I went all the way up to 7 colors, like what percentage of your yardage you would need, of like your overall yardage for each color, depending on how many you're using. Now, obviously that hasn't been tested by knitters, so you have to, always add 10%, 20% to it, be safe and have enough yarn. But so yeah, if you're knitting a bigger size, if you can find 6 colors you like, go for it. You don't have to buy 10 skeins instead of my 5 to make this sweater. You could just add in one, or go down to 3, and then you don't have to buy as much yarn. So yeah, I think that's a helpful little thing to include. And yeah, if you're thinking about knitting it and you live in the Montreal area, come visit me at Espace and I will very happily pour over colors with you. I obviously love Madeline Tosh. I've talked about my Toshaholism before. And I think part of why Tosh really works for stuff like this is that they just have such an enormous palette that you are going to be able to find 9 different shades of purpley blue to choose from. Some cool, some warm, some with more pinks, some with more orange, whatever. And obviously there's tons of amazing dyers out there, but not a lot have such an enormous palette where we're choosing colors from within one yarn brand can work. But the other thing you can do is, like Carla, you don't have to do it all out of the same brand. You could have a skein of DK Madeline Tosh, move into a skein of DK Tanis Fiber Arts, or whatever cool indie dyer you found. You could even go into like a commercial yarn like Lang. So don't be scared to do that, because while there may be very slight variations in the thickness, the truth is that this kind of gauge, the 20 stitches per, you're not going to see it. I mean, obviously swatch. Oh, that gets hard to say when you do that. But my experience, I knit the Andrea Mowry's Comfort Fake Cardigan, a mix of Art Fill and Madeline Tosh, and it's fine. So yeah, that is my advice on knitting the Galore. So I said that I felt like this was my first hit sweater, and I was thinking about why that happened, and just like, this is my segue into like a PSA. I'm here to help. So when the last podcast I talked about Fourscore and how it was like my first sort of big pattern back after a long break. And Lisa and Melissa, the owners at Espace Tricot, have been so good to me, and they did me a huge favor when I was launching that pattern. Lisa said, hey, why don't I wear it on the podcast? Because they have a really successful podcast. And it's true, like I help manage the Ravelry. We always get questions about what Lisa and Melissa are wearing, to the point where now they actually have a segment that's like what we're wearing. And so Lisa wore it on the podcast and talked about it and mentioned the discount code that I had going. And it just, and people went for it, and people bought it, and then people actually bought the yarn online. It was really cool to like be in the store and see the order for the drops there and be like, oh, this is somebody who's knitting my Fourscore. This is so cool. And that really helped me. And they have a huge audience. They have and they have their audience's trust. And here I was sort of Johnny come lately, or Johnny lately come back. And they gave me that boost, and it helped. But I really felt when I came out with the Galore that like I can't go back to that well and be like, hey, Lisa, Melissa, would you like to wear the Galore now on your next podcast? Also, sidebar, anybody who knows Lisa and Melissa and follows Espace Tricot, can you imagine Lisa or Melissa in the sweater? No, it's not their deal at all. Very, very stylish ladies. This is not in their style wheelhouse at all. So I was like, okay, how am I going to get some traction like I did with Fourscore? So I actually emailed Madeline Tosh directly. I just went to the website and I found the contact email and wrote them a nice message sort of saying, I'm an indie designer. I have made this pattern in your yarn. I love your yarn. I definitely mentioned that I work for one of their stockists, and just asked them if there's any way they'd be interested in sharing it with their audience. And they were. I sent them some photographs, and I sent them a discount code. In fact, I named the discount code for them. Like, that was also my way of sort of being like, please and thank you. We'll make the discount code MadTosh. That is not the current discount code, just FYI, just at the time that I launched the pattern. So they shared it with their audience, and I think that had a huge impact on my sales and how many people saw it. And I guess the moral of my story is don't be afraid to ask for help. And it's okay to show a little hustle. I want to do this like for a living, there's no question. And so I have to be serious about it. And I think, like anyone, I have my worries of seeming overambitious or grasping or something like that. But the truth is I believe in what I'm doing, and I think it's good work, and I want it to find the audience that wants it. And I can't do that alone. I have to ask people who have more reach to share it. And I don't want anyone to buy it or knit it that doesn't want to buy it or knit it, but I do want it to get in front of people. And in order to do that, I have to ask for help. So that's kind of become part of my routine now when I'm launching a pattern is reaching out to either indie dyers or the yarn company that I used the yarn for. I haven't done a lot of stuff where I've asked for yarn support. For the most part, I buy my own yarn. So it's not that relationship, but just to say, hey, I made something beautiful with your product. I like your product. If you like mine, maybe you want to share it. And the truth is, I worked in marketing for years for arts organizations, so I know that most people are desperate for content. They go to work every day and need to put something on social media, and it's a lot of work to create all of that by yourself. So if someone comes along and says, hey, would you like to share my content? Most of the time, the answer is going to be, yeah, I would. That would be great. That gives me one less thing to come up with to post today. So I don't know. I don't know how much this applies to all of you who are watching. If you I don't think you have to be a knitwear designer for this advice to hit home. I just think whatever it is you're trying to do, whatever thing you want people to know about you and your work, ask people to share it. The worst thing they can say is no, and the worst thing they can think of you is that you're asking a lot. And that's that. Okay, so here we go. There's my now you know moment. So next segment. Here is my old knit. Today I am wearing my Ulmus Shawl, which was designed by Kirsten Kapur. She designs as Through the Loops. And actually I meant to look up the date on this of when I knit it, but I don't remember. But it's a long time ago. And it still looks so good. I've reblocked it a few times over the years. This is knit in Malabrigo sock in Archangel with Sophie's Toes in Blackberry. So Sophie's Toes was really cool, indie yarn dyer company run by Emily Parsons, but she just closed up shop about a year ago, which is too bad. She really did lovely work. So I'm going to try and hold this up and show you a little bit what the stitch pattern looks like. It's a slip stitch with, I think it's like a garter stitch in the middle. And it's a big triangular shawl. There's 3 sizes in the pattern, and it ends with this very pretty lace leaf pattern here. And the reason I wanted to wear it specifically today, even though it's like 900 degrees outside, is that this is really the stitch pattern that brought me to Galore. And I didn't even really realize it at first, but I knit this so many years ago, and I remember being so amazed at the way that this slip stitch pattern blended these 2 colors of yarn together, that separately, in fact, I have them. So I have a bit of a problem. This is my second skein of Archangel that I bought at the time. So this skein is at least 10 years old, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to bring myself to knit it because I love it so much. Its potential means so much more to me than it could ever be as a finished object. It's maybe pathological. Anyway, so that's my Archangel, and this is my tiny bit of Sophie's Toes. Why do I have this? Let's talk about this. Why do I have this? So why have I had this for 10 years in my stash? What am I going to do with this? Anyways, here it is. I have it, so I can show you. This is the yarn that I used in my Ulmus, and I was really fascinated as I knit it in the way that this stitch blended these 2 yarns together. And in fact, I made a mistake in this. It's supposed to be truly reversible. You can see that there's this column of knits on this side. And there's supposed to be one on this side as well, which I didn't realize until I knit the pattern again 5 years later for my mom and went, oh, I slipped my yarn with yarn in back instead of yarn in front, and it made a difference. But I made the same mistake the whole way through. So you'd never know. So let that be a lesson. Make a mistake, just keep on making it. In knitting, not in life. In knitting. And that's probably not even true in knitting. Anyways, I always remembered the way this had blended the two yarns, and so when it came time to work with the 5 skeins of Malintosh, my mind immediately went to, I should do something a little bit like what Kirsten used in her Ulmus Shawl. So there you go. That's why I have it. And Kirsten is amazing. Like, she must have, I don't know, 300 patterns, probably more, on Ravelry's shawl. Beautiful shawls. So many beautiful shawls. Other things too. Some great, great hats. She's still active and designing beautiful things all the time. And what's been really cool is sort of, as a longtime fan, has been watching her extremely photogenic children grow up. They often model for her, and they totally serve great attitude in these pictures. These kids are amazing. I hope my kid grows up to be that fierce. So there you go. This is the Ulmus. I still recommend it all the time. I think I just mentioned it yesterday at Espace Tricot to somebody looking to use 2 skeins of sock yarn. It's, yeah, and it's super fun. Although, I say it's super fun. I've learned that it's super fun. The first time I knit it, I went and looked at my Ravelry notes, and I was a little bit brutal. I'm like, it's so boring! Which I would never say now that I design, because I can only imagine how much that would suck to read. I'm not like super into shawls, I guess. I like the interest of garments, so because things change and move. But I wear it all the time. It's really one of my favorites. So now on my needles is my next segment, but I don't really have anything on my needles that I can show you. I showed you the Sibilla sweater, or Sibilla. I have no idea how you say it. Last time, but I have made 0 progress on that because I'm doing some design work, but also some sample knitting for the store, which I also can't show you because it's secret. But I will show you some yarn that I'm working with and some false starts. So this is sport weight yarn from Yarn Experiments. Monica is a dyer in North Carolina who reached out to me on Instagram and asked if I wanted to collaborate. And I went and looked at her yarn and was like, yeah, I definitely do. Her stuff is so beautiful. So, and I was thinking about fades and thinking about color work because it was fresh off the Galore at the time, but then she posted this colorway and I was like, send me just that. I want to work with that color. And I had a very specific idea in mind, which I sent her sort of a verbal description because I'm a terrible sketch artist. But once I got going on it, it just didn't work. This is one of like my 7 tries on it. Just that it was just an idea that wouldn't scale up. Like whenever I was trying to work on getting it into larger sizes, I realized it was just going to become so impossibly complicated that after, I mean, seriously, days and days of terrible math, I just gave up and was like, I have to come up with something else. This yarn doesn't want to be this. So I posted a picture on Instagram a little while ago of where I got to with it. I'm much further along now and I don't want to post it. I don't know, it's stupid. Do I think someone's going to steal my idea and knit it up faster than me? Not really, but I feel like I'm at a point now in the design process where I don't want to share it till it's finished. But if you're super curious, you could go find my Instagram, Stephanie Earp. If you sort of scroll back in my timeline, you'll find it. So yeah, I'm aiming to have that out in the fall, and I'll be sending the sample back to Monica at Yarn Experiments so that she can show it off at her fall shows. And yeah, we've had an awesome time sort of messaging over Instagram, getting to know each other, and I definitely hope to work with her again. This is the awesomeness of being a knitting designer, is having like really, really cool dyers reach out to you and say like, hey, I want to work with my yarn. You're like, yes, yes. So yeah, I think that pretty much brings this to a close. As always, I'm going to offer a discount on the pattern that I featured. So the Galore sweater, I'm going to do 15% off on Galore with the code CURSED. I just came up with it. Okay, yeah, cursed. CURSED. If you dare to brave the curse of the Galore sweater and make one for yourself, be sure not to pack it in your luggage. Keep it with you at all times. So I'll do 15% off for 1 week from the day that this podcast is posted. And I definitely think maybe I'll do like a knit along on it in the fall. I don't have a Ravelry group, and I'm sort of hesitant to start one. I'm just not sure that I have the bandwidth to manage it. I'm thinking about it, but maybe something on Instagram. I don't know. I will. I'll think about the logistics of it, and if any of you are interested in joining me, we'll figure out a way to communicate and share pictures and share modifications and all that stuff. So yeah, you can find Galore, which by the way is named after a Dragonette album. Dragonette is like my favorite band of all time. I'd say that when I have my headphones in, 80% of the time I'm listening to Dragonette, and the other 20% of the time I'm listening to the podcast My Favorite Murder. That's my life. So go check out Dragonette. They're amazing. Wait, we're going to do maybe another long. We got the 15% off for 1 week with the code Kirsten. And to conclude, I'd like to now have a moment of silence in memoriam.